Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. C.S. Lewis. A person quietly walks through the storm, where every pain is not a harsh punishment, but a silent invitation to forge their resilience. Hardship at its core does not transform us in an instant. It gently peels away the fragile shell, forcing us to confront ourselves, bare, vulnerable, yet brimming with potential waiting to awaken. An ordinary person, untouched by trials, is like a rough block of stone yet to feel the sculptor's hand, without form, without soul. Only when challenged and carved by failure, polished by wounds, do they gradually reveal the contours of an extraordinary destiny. It is precisely in those long nights of doubt, when faith wavers and every path seems sealed shut, that a person learns to stand firm not because of circumstances, but thanks to an iron will. That is the miraculous moment of transformation. From one led by fate to the creator of their own destiny. The miracle lies in the fact that hardship does not discriminate against anyone, but how we respond is what determines everything. Some collapse and dissolve under pressure. Others quietly absorb it, turning pain into strength, wounds into profound wisdom. They do not become extraordinary by avoiding difficulties, but because they dare to go through them while preserving their pure essence. Hardship is not a period at the end, but merely a comma opening to a grander epic chapter. It is life's gentle whisper. Beneath that ordinary shell, you are being forged into a version stronger, deeper, and more radiant than you ever dreamed. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. People often cleverly avoid their own fears, creating a fragile illusion of safety, postponing pain, covering up insecurity, and convincing themselves that silence is the way to stay in control. Yet, what is buried does not disappear. It quietly grows in the shadows like a small crack spreading wider, threatening to collapse the entire tower of the inner self. Facing it, therefore, is not a step of absolute certainty, but a courageous journey amid every trembling anxiety. When we look directly at the problem, whether it is a humiliating failure, a deep wound, or a harsh truth, we are shattering the old defensive layers. In that moment, we reclaim mastery, no longer manipulated by invisible fears, but beginning to name it, understand it, and gradually recreate ourselves. Not every confrontation brings the desired outcome. There are losses that cannot be salvaged, truths that cannot be reversed. But the real value lies not in controlling the outcome, but in the silent transformation within. When we dare to step into the dark regions of the soul, we are not only seeking solutions, we are growing. We learn to accept, to let go, and most importantly, to no longer fear our own emotions. The mind is like a sealed room. The more we avoid, the more stifling and dark the air becomes. Only when we fling the door wide open, even if the light exposes dusty corners, does the space begin to be cleansed. Facing things is not about winning everything, but about no longer being imprisoned by ourselves. And it is from that very courage that every change, no matter how small, has the chance to sprout. The difference between effort and victory lies in just a bit of determination. Effort is something many people easily start. The first days filled with passion, steps brimming with hope. But victory does not belong to the one who starts fastest, but to the one who remains steadfast and does not stop when things become heavy. It is precisely that bit of determination, small in form but fierce in inner strength, that is the invisible boundary between giving up and a great breakthrough. Determination is not a fleeting, explosive flame, but a silent, enduring commitment. It shows most clearly in moments no one witnesses, when fatigue creeps into every thought, when failure gnaws at belief, when hundreds of reasons urge us to stop. At such times, ordinary effort will waver, but genuine determination will hold us steady like an underground spring, not noisy, but nourishing the entire forest of will with fresh green. The difference does not lie in talent or favorable circumstances, but in how we face our own limits. Those who only make effort stop when they reach the threshold of endurance. Those with determination will redefine that very threshold. They are not stronger from the start, but more persistent in every moment they want to give up. And it is that repeated persistence over time that creates the leap we call a glorious victory. Two people climb the same mountain, starting with the same strength. But when the fog thickens and the path becomes slippery, one chooses to stop to preserve themselves, while the other takes one more small step. It is that very step, repeated in the most difficult moments, that has led them to a radiant summit. For victory is not a sudden flash, but the crystallization of countless times we choose to continue, even when only a fragile, yet extraordinarily resilient bit of determination remains. Success is not how high you have climbed, but how much positive difference you have made for the world. T. Bennett. We often measure our self-worth by the height of our position rather than the depth of our impact. People easily rush into the race to climb fame, where money and recognition become visible, comparable milestones. Yet, in that journey, we unwittingly forget that a lonely peak has no meaning if it only serves our small ego, without touching anyone else. True success, at a deeper level, is not accumulation for oneself, but a gentle spreading. One person may stand very high, yet remain alone, while another, even in a humble position, quietly stirs positive ripples that spread widely in the lives around them. It could be a timely word of encouragement, a kind act without expectation of return, or the lasting value they help build. Those things are not loud but enduring, like a ray of light slipping through a small crack in the door, enough to warm an entire vast space. When we shift from what have I achieved to what have I brought, a profound transformation occurs. The ego shrinks, but value expands infinitely. And the beautiful paradox is, precisely when we stop chasing success in the old way, we touch a greater form of success, serene fulfillment, independent of any comparison or external judgment. Life is like a calm lake surface. Climbing high is like standing on the peak to gaze, while creating difference is like dropping a stone into the water. The peak gives us a vast view, but the stone creates the ripples that spread far. And in the end, what remains forever is not how high you stood, but the positive ripples you left behind, still continuing to touch the world even when you are no longer there. Do not go gentle into that good night, Dylan Thomas. Humanity's survival instinct is the will not to dissolve gently into the darkness. The night here is silent withering, hope exhausted, desires extinguished, moments when we feel ourselves gradually surrendering. People often seek artificial comfort when surrendering, a short-lived kind of peace when we stop resisting. But that very gentleness is the shortcut straight to the deepest loss of self. Not surrendering does not mean always winning, but refusing to let oneself disappear while still able to burn bright. It is a fierce yet silent inner state, like a small flame still stubbornly flickering amid the freezing wind. When everything around seems to close off, a person stands before an essential choice. Either let oneself drift with the withering flow, or grip tightly the remaining will in a firm existence, even if only with a faint ray of light. What is special is that this resistance needs no clamor or straw heroism. It can be very everyday, continuing to stand up after an exhausting day, holding firm to faith when the whole world has doubted, or still loving even though the heart has once been shattered. Those small actions, when repeated in the darkness, become silent resilience, the thing that makes up humanity's immortal dignity. The soul is like a twilight sky. Darkness is inevitable, but how we step into it determines our own beauty. Some let the light fade gradually in silence, but others make the sky blaze one last time with the most vivid colors. And perhaps the profound message is not to fight against the darkness, but to live in such a way that even when darkness descends, we still preserve the radiant light within ourselves. The unexamined life is not worth living, Socrates. Most of us drift through days like a leaf on the water current, reacting to circumstances, chasing expectations, rarely pausing to question ourselves, am I truly living or just existing? The examination here is not negative doubt, but a courageous act of inner illumination, the process of confronting our thoughts, choices, and authentic values. When a person begins to observe their own life, they embark on an uncomfortable journey. Self-awareness not only brings clarity, but also exposes contradictions between words and actions, between the person we dream of being and the one we currently are. Like turning on the light in a room long uncleaned, the light does not create the dust, but makes it impossible for us to pretend anymore. And it is at that moment that we are forced to choose return to the familiar darkness, or begin real change. An unexamined life often brings short-term comfort, less conflict, less doubt, but the price is shallowness in life's experience. On the contrary, a deeply reflective life may be full of questions and unease, but it is brimming with meaning. Because when we clearly understand what we are doing and why, every action carries weight, every decision has a vibrant soul. Life is like a thick book. If we only flip the pages without reading, the story passes meaninglessly. But when we pause, reflect, and truly read each chapter of our life, we are not only the character but also the one who deeply understands the profound meaning of that very story. And perhaps the value of a life lies not in its length but in the depth of awareness, where we not only live but also understand how we are living fully. Fall 7 times, stand up 8. Japanese proverb. It is not to glorify never failing, but to honor the silent strength of standing up after each fall, persistent and resilient. Each fall leaves a trace, wounds, doubts, recurring fears. But it is precisely the moment after the fall, when we choose to rise, that a miraculous inner transformation occurs. We are no longer the previous person, but a version who understands more clearly our own limits and capabilities. What makes people stop is not the number of failures, but the meaning they assign to them. If each fall is proof of inadequacy, we shrink back, self-limiting. But if each fall is a precious lesson, then standing up becomes the natural reflex of growth. Standing up the 8th time is not just a physical act, but a powerful affirmation. We do not let our self-definition be framed by old stumbles. Humans are like a spring. Each time compressed by hardship, if it does not break, it will bounce back with greater force than ever. That rebound does not come from luck, but from inner structure, faith, will, endurance, and rebirth. Resilient people are not those who have never fallen, but those so familiar with standing up that it has become their nature. The journey does not end when we fall, but only ends when we refuse to rise. And it is precisely in that seemingly monotonous repetition, falling then rising, rising then walking on, that people gradually build solid inner strength, enough to continue through all the thorns of life. The difficulties you are facing today are helping you build the strength you need for tomorrow. Robert 2. People do not grow in a comfortable, safe zone, but are forged in the furnace of intense pressure. Difficulties on the surface always appear as obstacles, making us tired, doubtful, even wanting to give up. But deep inside, each challenge is like an invisible compressive force, forcing us to adapt, expanding inner limits we had never touched before. We often react with resistance, wanting everything easy, the path smooth, but it is precisely that not easy that is where true strength is formed. Just as muscles only develop when bearing heavy loads, the will only becomes firm when passing through precarious days. Each time you overcome fear, endure pressure, or persist in adverse circumstances, you are quietly recreating yourself, more enduring, deeper, and harder to subdue. What matters is not whether difficulties disappear, but who you are becoming in that journey. Some are broken by circumstances, but others are forged by those very circumstances into a resilient version. The difference lies in perspective. If we see difficulty as an enemy, we always resist. If we view it as a strict trainer, we cooperate, learn, and grow with it. Life is like an ancient forge. Today you are in the midst of the blazing red fire, clearly feeling the heat and pressure. But that very fire, if you do not abandon it, will remove the soft parts and reveal the steel core within. And one day, looking back, you will smile and realize, what once exhausted you today was actually the gift that gave you the strength to step more firmly into a brighter tomorrow. Perseverance is not a long race. It is many short races, one after another. Walter Elliot. We often imagine perseverance as a great fire that burns endlessly without extinguishing. But in reality, the human mind operates like breathing, rising and falling, sometimes strong, sometimes gentle, needing constant restart after each seeming exhaustion. Perseverance, therefore, is not absolute endurance, but the art of starting over, time after time, with gentle patience. Each short race is a tiny phase of effort, a day of serious work, one time overcoming procrastination, a moment choosing to continue instead of stopping. Those short segments, viewed individually, may seem ordinary, but when connected, they create a journey longer than any momentary breakthrough. This frees us from the pressure of always having to be perfect. You don't need to be strong all the time, you just need to return to the track step by step. Perseverance is like a heartbeat, not an endless sustained rhythm, but the regular repetition of contractions and expansions. Sometimes advancing quickly, sometimes slowing down, even stopping completely. But what matters is not turning the stop into a permanent end. Each return, no matter how small, is a silent victory over stagnation. What makes the difference is not the person who runs fastest at one moment, but the one who never leaves the track over time. And when looking back, you will be astonished to realize the long journey you thought you persevered through was actually countless short races, where you chose to start again more times than you wanted to quit. Quality is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. The true value of a person is not shaped by dazzling, explosive moments, but by what they repeat steadily every day. A good action may create a strong impression, but it is only a lone spark. Habit is the silent flow that shapes the entire person. Like each drop of water falling steadily into a bottle, slow, patient, but ultimately determining how high the water rises. People are often caught in the moment effect, wanting to shine when there is motivation, inspiration, and witnessing eyes. But true quality is not born from those times. It is built in the most ordinary moments, when no one is watching, when there is no immediate reward, when we must choose between ease and discipline. It is in those small choices that authentic identity is formed. We are not just someone who does well once, but someone who always does well naturally. Habit possesses miraculous power. It frees us from dependence on fleeting emotions. When an action is repeated long enough, it no longer requires strong willpower, but becomes an instinctive reflex. And then, quality is no longer something we strive for, but something that flows naturally from how we live. It is like an artist practicing every day. At some point, mastery is no longer effort, but has become pure instinct. Life is like a large painting. Each action is a brushstroke. If we only care for the standout strokes, the painting will be fragmented. But if every small stroke is meticulously cared for, repeated with consistency, the whole will become harmonious and full of depth. And finally, what makes others recognize quality in you is not the times you try to shine, but the way you silently maintain your beautiful standards day after day until it becomes your very self.